and welcome to another episode of the Family Gamers Podcast. This is episode 390.
Hey, hello everybody. We are marching towards that magical number 400. We're going to hit it this year, but for now it's just 390. Who are we? We are the Family Gamers. As always, I'm your host, Andrew, and I'm joined by my lovely and wonderful wife, Anitra.
That's me.
And we are marching headlong into February, which is, of course, the month of Valentine's Day.
It is.
And we're not going to talk about sappy, sweet stuff this week, but we are going to talk about working together.
Yeah, we're going to talk about cooperative games. It's been a really surprisingly long time since we focused an episode on cooperative games.
It's not going to be a typical, here's our top 5 favorite cooperative games, blah, 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 blah. And I think you'll understand why as we kind of get into the conversation around why play cooperative games, what's a good fit for cooperative games, like all those kinds of things. And so, we'll leave that, like I said, to the second half of the show. For now, we've got all sorts of normal first half stuff, like some facts, for example.
Yeah, lay them on me.
All right. Well, I did some animal searches, because who doesn't like animals? And I have a couple of animal facts for you. How's that?
Okay.
All right. So the exact number actually fluctuates, but it turns out there are about 390 known species of sharks in the world.
Okay.
From tiny lantern sharks to the massive whale sharks. 390 different species. That's a lot. Also, 390 pounds is about the average weight of a full-grown jaguar, which just makes me want to have one as a pet a little bit more.
No. No and no and no some more. No.
Fine.
That's a pretty cool fact, though. 390 species of shark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think basically everybody knows the great white, right? And then I guess a lot of people know like the hammerhead because it's kind of got that really unique shaped head or whatever.
Yeah, I could probably name about 5 or 6 species of shark.
Yeah, like I went deep sea fishing once and caught a dog shark.
Okay.
That was pretty cool. I mean, it was like, it's 1.5 feet long. It was cool because it was like, it looked exactly like a shark, except it was tiny. I mean, all things considered. So
Sure.
But it was kind of neat to like hold it in my hands and, don't worry, I put it back.
Good.
Anyway.
Yeah.
How about a message from our sponsor?
This week, we're going to tackle another listener question. Where do you start when wanting to buy a house? The very first thing you need to do is start saving as much as you can. Cut back on anything you don't need and kick your savings into overdrive. Then, look up your credit reports on annualcreditreport.com. You want to know if you have incorrect or incomplete data in your credit history. Once you start getting closer to your goal, you can visit a few banks to get mortgage quotes to see what they think you can afford. However, don't trust their estimate. Do your own. Can you actually afford the monthly payment they set? The way to find out is to find the difference between that payment and your current rent, then save the difference each month. If you have to dip into savings to do this, you can't afford their estimate. Remember, though, your monthly payments will be more than just the principal and interest towards the mortgage. It will also include taxes, insurance, and maintenance. Once you have a down payment of ideally at least 5%, you know you can afford the monthly cost, and you qualify for a loan, then you're ready to start looking for a realtor to work with. Ask as many people as you can for referrals. If you want to talk through your specific situation and how to achieve your goals, set up a time to talk for free at firstmovefinancial.com/familygamers.
All right. Thanks so much to the team at First Move Financial for sponsoring another episode of the Family Gamers podcast. In with us again for 2025. We really do appreciate it. So, Anitra, I think we've been doing okay on playing games lately this week. I think we did all right.
Better, yeah.
We did all right.
Better.
We are also going to talk about our monthly report for January, of which I can tell you right now, mine is even worse than normal.
I mean, mine is worse than normal too, but you always comment on how like mine is so much better than yours. So
I mean, anyway, we'll get there. We'll get there in a bit. All right. Let's start with the game that's probably going to be our snap review this week, and that's Combo.
Yeah, so we played it a couple more times in the last 2 weeks. This is a very fun family game, but unlike some of the other games we've talked about, there is kind of a specific audience type for this game, I think. It plays 2 to 6 players, but both the 2-player variant and the 6-player variant are a little weird, so it's best at 3 to 5 players.
I think that's probably true. So this is Surfasaurus Max redone as this kind of fruit-themed combo game. And, it's a lot of fun. It does take a little bit to kind of wrap your head around how the mechanics of the game works, but it's not bad. It is really, really great. This came from Happy Camper, who also did Trio, which, of course, we've talked a ton about.
Yes.
Really, really fun game. We did give it 4.5 out of 5 fruits, I believe.
Yes.
So that is combo. Lots of fun.
We've also gotten in a couple more plays of Flower Fields. I think we talked about this maybe not last episode, but the one before.
That sounds right.
I'm starting to see how the strategies work in this game. It's one of those ones where it's a tile-laying game. It's got that rondelle, kind of like a patchwork style thing, and it makes the decision-making very tight every turn because you can never do as much as you want, and looking ahead on the rondelle, like, well, I really want that one, but it's going to be expensive to grab it, but if I don't go ahead and move that now to grab it, it could be around and cheaper next turn, but it's also very possible it'll just be gone. You're weighing that kind of decision every time.
Yeah, I really like that there actually is a different, set of strategy in a game like this. I feel like with Patchwork, very commonly, you're just trying to put the pieces together in the best way. And with this, because there's all these different kinds of ways that you can score points, you actually can say, well, I'm going for this strategy right now, as opposed to that strategy or whatever. And that is something that one of the last times we played, I went in a completely different direction and tried some different stuff, and it actually worked out pretty well. So, I don't know. I really like Flower Field. I think it combines a lot of mechanics that I already kind of liked. I mean, I think for me, Patchwork was getting a little long in the tooth. We talk a lot about Barren Park, which is kind of the 4-player version of Patchwork, or at least that's the way that we represent it. And this has a lot of that same kind of DNA, but with some extra decision-making involved. It's like King Domino crossed with Barren Park, I would say.
I'm sure I can see what you said. Yeah,
it's not okay. Barren Park is a little more common. King Domino crossed with like Patchwork.
With Patchwork,
is a better way to put it, but for up to 4 players.
Yeah, I also tried the solo variant of it tonight before we recorded this podcast because you were busy.
Yep.
Yeah. I will say I'm not a huge fan of games that are basically like, hey, there's going to be Automata who's basically playing the part of another player, except they're only doing half of what a player would do. So like in this case, they're not building out their own field. They're just taking pieces away from the thing. But within that framework, it worked really well. It was smooth. It was not a bunch of extra bookkeeping and decision making I had to do. And I could look ahead and make some kind of prediction for what the Automata might do, which that part of it you really do need in this game because that uncertainty is part of what drives your decisions.
Sure. So that is Flower Field. That is from Horrible Guild, I think?
Yes, it is from Horrible Guild.
Cool.
Moving on. Last week, you and I sat down and played the Holiday Hijinks number 9, the Marriage Mix-Up. So I think this might be the first or maybe the second Holiday Hijinks that has had a thing where you split up into teams to solve some puzzles.
I actually really like that.
And it was really nice. It worked really well thematically. It makes it a great game to play as a couple, even more so than a lot of the other Holiday Hijinks. Like a couple of years ago, we played the Cupid Crisis, and that one was great, and it was great to do as a couple. But in the Cupid Crisis, the conceit is that you are locked alone in a room and trying to figure out like where your date went. And in the Marriage Mix-Up, you are onlookers, observers, friends, I guess, of a couple getting married, and you don't know where the couple is, and a bunch of stuff has gone wrong, and you're trying to fix it all before the wedding starts.
Right. Yep.
So you end up dividing into the bride side and the groom side, and each side only has some of the information you need to solve the puzzles, which was really fun.
It was fun. Yeah, I had a good time with it. I liked it a lot.
We also played one of your favorite games this week.
Okay. I even played. I was a good sport.
You were a very good sport. We went to an event that was a fundraiser and had a lot of waiting around, and our kids were getting really bored. And I'm like, well, I brought a couple of Button Shy games in my purse, because of course I did. And they decided they really wanted to play in Vino Morte. and our youngest wanted to play it over and over and over again, which I should have seen coming.
And I didn't complain at all.
You didn't complain at all. You were a good sport.
So proud of me.
You were probably a better sport than me, and I actually enjoy this game. So, yeah, it is a really handy one to have around, though. Be like, hey, we're going to play this for a while, and waiting won't feel so bad.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, it's incredibly simple. I don't even know what else to really say about it. This is basically the Poison game from The Princess Bride.
Yeah, it's spread out to any number of people up to, I think, 16 or something like that. We actually did a review of it years and years and years ago because I enjoy it so much, or did enjoy it so much, and I will link to that review in the show notes.
Cool. We have our Monday night game nights, of course, and this week we had not a new member of the game crew. She has been coming a couple of times, but this week she brought a game that she learned over the weekend prior, which is the game Rivages from, I think this is Pandasaurus. That sounds right.
That sounds right, yeah.
This game is really interesting. This is kind of a route building game, I guess?
Kinda.
Yeah.
It's like a route building game, except you're not constrained to always add on to the end of your existing route. It's more sort of a explore across the map game, I think might be a better way to put it.
So in Rivages, you have two cards in front of you that define a set of hexes that you can take on your next turn or travel across or explore on your next turn. And so you need to pick one of the two cards, and whichever hex set is at the top of that card, it's going to show, a set of terrain. It might be 2 or 3 hexes of different colors, or there might be some other kind of perks on that. And you look at the island that you're exploring and the certain goals that you have. You might want to visit certain points. You might want to get certain things that are on the island. You might just want to get to what is the exit, which is essentially the other boat ramp, so you can just leave this island, go to another one. And you have to take a look at the two cards that you have in front of you and figure out, of those two options, which one is going to get you the closest to those goals that you have. You do that thing and you cross it off, and then you hand those cards to the player to the left, and then obviously you receive the cards from the player to your right. And you keep doing this. It's not really turn-based. It's kind of this loose kind of thing, almost like the way Merchants of Magic works.
I mean, like it's supposed to be simultaneous turns, like Merchants of Magic.
Yep. So what you're trying to do basically is generate the most points through various methods of point gathering on each of these islands. And after you run out of the extra cards, because as you work your way down the card, once you've crossed everything off on a card, you just discard it and draw a new one. And once everybody kind of runs out of those cards, the game is pretty much over, and whoever has the most points wins.
Yeah. It was really neat. It felt kind of like a roll and write, and kind of like like I said, an exploration game. It was a really neat set of puzzles that you're balancing a point salady kind of like, do I want to go for these points, or do I want to go for these points, or maybe I could do this, or hey, this opportunity came up, that's an easy way to grab 2 more points, or whatever. It's definitely one of those games where you're going to explore lots of different strategies across repeated plays. But because of the way the game works, that you can finish exploring an island and draw a new island at random, you can find yourself changing strategies mid-game pretty frequently, because each island has its own set of goals. And sometimes those are going to work out really well for you, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes I just want to move on to the next island and be done with this place.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a complicated game. I would say probably 8+ is an accurate sense of the age range on Rivages. This is a dry erase marker game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're able to write on the cards and do all this stuff. I don't know that it absolutely blew me away, but I would not in any way, shape, or form shy away from playing it again.
I would definitely enjoy playing it again. Yeah. I might seek it out. I'm not sure I would buy it, but I would definitely seek out playing it again.
Sure. All right. Awesome. So next, also another hexagon-based exploration game. We played a little bit more Landmarks from Floodgate Games.
Yeah, we played it on the harder difficulty this time.
We did.
And we knocked it out of the park. You did a great job with clues.
Well, thank you.
It's really did.
It's a cooperative game. We'll have to talk about that later. But Landmarks is a pretty cool game where you have a clue giver who is cluing everybody else are hinting on the route that people have to travel on this board with words. So you're kind of playing this word association game to walk people through exploring this island and not getting too many traps or not running out of water. You got to get a little bit of treasure and you got to get the heck out of there. That's the goal.
Yeah. And we capped off that particular night with more Trio.
I mean, why not? I mean, I feel like
we love Trio.
Yeah, it's kind of the game that buttresses all games. You know, whenever you've got 5 minutes to fill, you can break out a game of Trio and have a good time. All right. Next is a game called Strato. This game is actually really interesting. So this is technically a solo game, but we've been playing it as a 2-player game. You can play it as a solo game or a 2-player game, but it's really kind of intended for 1 player.
They have rules for playing it cooperatively. It feels a little bit like a Sprolopolis or something like that, where you're like, oh, well, we each have a hand of cards and we're going to take turns. Sure.
Yeah. So this is a game from Helvetic. It is really interesting. So this game has, the premise is that there's a tornado and you have 2 or more elements that the element cards all do different kinds of things. Like if you put a rain card down, it's going to force you to move another card from the other side of the tornado towards it or something, or the wind card blows other cards, away from it, or all this other stuff. The sun card really doesn't do all that much, whatever. Basically, the game is there's 10 of these scenarios, and each one essentially is a puzzle to get the cards into a certain layout.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're shuffling and drawing cards, so the mix of all those elements together is going to vary the cards that you draw. So it's not like a pure information puzzle or something like that, where you just have to figure it out. There is a little bit of randomness in this game, but it is a really interesting puzzle. We brought this one to our date breakfast, and
it's a bad choice for a date breakfast.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the worst choice, but it doesn't really fit the table well. I mean, I guess if we sat on the same side of the table,
it'd be easier.
It would have been a little bit easier, but not a home run on that part. But the game itself is actually really interesting, and I'm looking forward to playing it some more.
Yeah, game weight wise, it's a good choice for date breakfast. It just doesn't fit super well on the table.
I mean, we'd have to kind of pre-plan for a little bit of that better than we did, for sure.
Yeah. And just one more to talk about this week. About a week ago now, we put together the Micro Macro Funfair Jigsaw Puzzle.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a 500-piece jigsaw puzzle, which is not a lot of pieces.
Like, it's not small, but it's not super hard in terms of jigsaws.
But it looks like a Micro Macro board. What does that mean?
It means it's all black and white line drawings.
I think this took 4 or 5 people about 3.5 hours to actually put this thing together.
Yeah.
I don't think there was a moment in which we were all super frustrated or anything like that, but I think the coolest thing about just the puzzle part of this, and we'll talk about kind of what comes after the puzzle, but the coolest part of the puzzle part of this was more so, I think, than any other puzzle that I've ever done with other people. There was way more collaboration because it's all lines. And even looking across the table, you can't just see something and be like, oh, I want that. Like, if you're doing a normal puzzle and you're like, I need all the red pieces, like, that's, You
just look across and you're like, oh, hey, can I have that red piece that you have?
Right. And this wasn't like that at all. And so there was a lot more communication than I would have expected for a puzzle that's relatively small. And eventually by the end, I was like, okay, these are all the regular shaped pieces. These are all the whatever shaped pieces. And I oriented them. So I had all the regular ones that were in one orientation and the regular in another. And I just spammed what was left until we just kind of finished the puzzle.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. Really, it actually was a really good puzzle.
I had to give up about 2 hours in because my back was cramping up from leaning over the table.
Sure.
But it was really neat. And like anything Micro Macro, there's also a whole series of find it puzzles in the jigsaw puzzle. I think I looked at the sheet. I think there's 53.
There's a lot. There's a lot.
And some of them are structured in a way to get you to find a story in the images that are there, just like you would when solving crimes in Micro Macro Crime City, which was pretty great.
So I can't quite find it on Amazon or something like that. So I'm not sure if it's even available in the States quite yet, but it's under $30. You get this whole puzzle and then you have all this Micro Macro related stuff. It's kind of a cross between Micro Macro and a Where's Waldo. It's a lot more seek and find than the typical Micro Macro stuff, but it definitely has some of that same Micro Macro DNA.
It looks like it is available directly from Hachette Board Games. It's $25.
I mean, you get the puzzle and you get all the extra pieces. Like that's a really good price. And then it's something you can package up and give to someone else.
It's entirely reasonable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And importantly, unlike Micro Macro Crime City or Micro Macro Full House, there are no criminal cases in this game. It is completely family friendly.
Yep. All right, Anitra, I've put it off until now. It is time for the great embarrassment.
You mean the monthly report?
Yes, that's exactly, yes.
All right. Do you want me to go first? Will that be less embarrassing?
I don't really care.
I'm going to go first.
Okay, that's fine.
I played only 19 unique games 29 times.
Yeah, I have 14 unique games 18 times. Bad month, everybody.
I'm going to guess your H-index was too, because mine was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I sure was. In Vino Morte 3 times and Video Game Champion twice. I also played Flower Fields twice. Really not a month for the record books or anything like that. I am really, really hoping that even though February is shorter, I think I'm getting things off the plate. Like I said, I've been saying this a lot lately. I feel like somebody once said that being an adult is like saying, I'll get to that next week once things clear up for the rest of your life. And I really feel that way right now.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But 18 plays of 14 unique games for an H index of 2. Pretty embarrassing stuff.
I mean, I'm shocked that my H-index is 2, but honestly, the only game that I really honestly played more than twice was A Nice Cuppa, which I played 6 times. So once you take that off, my number of plays gets really close to your number of plays.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll fix that sometime soon.
Oh, boy.
Really looking forward to it. On the flip side, our Facebook community has really been helping us out and propping us up, and the back talk from last week was pretty tremendous. So I want to welcome our new community members first, but then I definitely want to get into our back talk because I think we got some really great conversation about that.
I agree.
Yeah. So let's start with welcoming our new community members, and I'm going to start by saying welcome to Rose.
Welcome to Andy.
Welcome to Abdalhamid.
Welcome to Arturo.
Welcome to Victor.
Welcome to Nadia.
And welcome to Amber. I made sure to get Cookie Monster in on the welcoming party as well. He is
I can hear that gif in my head.
Right?
Hiya.
Hiya. So definitely head over to the community, say hello, talk about some games that you're playing. Keep an eye out for the back talk question that's going to be coming probably the same day this show comes out. The plan is to
as long as I remember.
Release the question as long as Anitra remembers, or maybe me, who knows. But let's talk about back talk questions, and let's talk about what they look like, what they sound like. What was our question from last week, Anitra?
Our question from 2 weeks ago was, what's your number one game to step away from the stresses and busyness of the world? And thankfully, about a week ago, the Joyful Jedi on Discord reminded me, / asked me if I had posted this to Facebook yet. And I went, oh no, I did not post it to Facebook. So we did get a full week of it in on Facebook.
All right, and I'm going to open it up, why not, with some of our feedback on Discord. So Olivia says, oddly enough, it's solo Marvel Champions. I have 149 plays of this game in the last 14 months. That's impressive, by the way. That's
roughly 10 plays a month.
More than 10 plays a month.
Yeah.
It's permanently set up on my basement table so I can just sit down after the kids are in bed and start playing. It's the right mix of requiring focus without being too brain-burny, looking at you, Spirit Island, and just roll with the card draw. And as opposed to Andrew, I feel like a cooperative deduction limited communication game like The Crew, Hanabi, or The Gang really helps me disconnect. They require all players to be completely focused on the game, and whatever is going on outside the game doesn't exist anymore. There is some level of stress, but the disconnect from everyday life is complete.
I can understand that.
Maybe it's because I play a lot of cooperative games with my family.
You want to disconnect from your family.
When I want to disconnect, yes, I do.
It's fine.
Yeah. I did comment back and say I totally agree with you on Marvel Champions. That would hit the same spot as Role Player.
Complex rules aren't a problem if you know them well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Olivia actually goes on. He says, I don't mind a lot of rules, but I need to be familiar with the game. Marvel Champions is one of the worst games to learn because of all the little rules and the ever-evolving rules. It took me about 20 to 30 plays before feeling familiar enough to teach it to other players. So the first 6 months with the game was definitely not applicable for disconnecting or de-stressing.
Man, I don't know if I can put that kind of investment into trying to de-stress.
Yeah, I respect that big time. Big respect on that one.
On Facebook, Jennifer Pike says, when I need to de-stress, I enjoy games that I find pretty and I don't feel super competitive about. like Azul and Ecosystem Savannah. I also enjoy silly party games for these times so we can all laugh away some of the stress, like Telestrations or Just One or Dixit.
Yeah, I can see party games doing that kind of thing, but like, you know what? Maybe it's because you and I are like the rule people. So if I'm playing a game with a group of people, I'm the one who has to explain the rules, and that really is going to break any kind of immersion I might have. I don't know what it is. I don't really know what it is, but all right. Anyway, back on Discord, the Joyful Jedi says, this is the post in which he reminded someone to post this on Facebook.
Thank you.
But he says, I don't think I go to games for an escape, but as a fun experience with others. I stream a good show to de-stress if needed. I think that's fair. I find getting a game out to be a level of stress in and of itself, not even if it's a difficult game. I also have no interest in playing a solo game. But that's where I am with video games too. When I game, I'm looking for a shared experience. I respect that. Video games for me is solo.
Yeah.
Generally speaking.
Yeah.
Board games for me is collaborative, competitive, whatever.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that's changed. You used to play more video games collaboratively before our kids were old enough to really participate, and then it becomes less fun for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned, I don't know, a couple of months ago now, how fun it would be if we had Rock Band again.
Right, and we haven't honestly really played Rock Band in well over 15 years at this point.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I get that.
Mm-hmm.
Back to Facebook, Jason says, Beacon Patrol is a nice game to unwind with. Tile-laying games can be pretty zen. I agree with you, Jason. I've never played Beacon Patrol, but I would really like to someday.
Nice game.
He says A Gentle Rain is good too. He's even played it while on phone interviews to keep himself from overthinking.
Oh, man. I could not do that.
Yes, but that's because you're the one giving the interview.
Oh, okay, that's true. That's true these days. Yeah, I have to take notes while I'm giving interviews.
Right.
Yeah. JP DeCoste back on the Discord. Ticket to Ride is the closest thing to an escape for me, but it's more like a favorite sweater or a well-loved pair of slippers that are always there to warm my feet when a chill is in the air.
Oh, I
JP
love that
is
idea.
Like always so poetic with everything he says and does. But I totally agree. Like, I get that idea. I really do kind of grok that. Mm-hmm.
Tyler Lowe says, I find trick-taking games relaxing. And I think the most stress-free trick-taking game I have is Marshmallow Test. I had to pipe up on that and say, we really did enjoy Marshmallow Test. We reviewed it, 6 or 7 years ago now.
I love the psychology of the Marshmallow Test.
Yes.
Like, it's fun.
Yes.
That whole idea is really, really fun for me. Morgify back on Discord. Azul is my favorite game to relax with a cup of coffee. Simple enough that I don't have to think about my next moves, and the click-clack of the tiles is just so darn soothing. Plus, the mini version can be taken anywhere for a mini price tag.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Nick says, I like co-op games where I work on a team with others. Also something that transports me to another world. Red Raven games are great for that.
Yeah.
I can see that. That would not de-stress me at all, but
what,
that's
the Red
fine.
Raven part of it?
Well, and there are a lot of co-op games that, while very enjoyable, are not what I would turn to de-stress.
Okay.
They would make me more stressed.
Okay. All right. I think we've heard this one before, but Kristen on Discord, A Gentle Rain is my go-to relaxation and de-stressing.
What?
However, I've got a nice cuppa coming soon as an add-on to their Kickstarter and cannot wait to play it.
Kristen and I, we're simpatico.
You two are like bros. I don't know. You should like hang out sometime or something. You're not that far away.
She's actually, she's one of our closer listeners geographically.
Yeah, I think we'll make that work.
One of these days.
Absolutely. Kristen, come calling. We'll do it.
Peter on Facebook says, I've heard diplomacy works well for that, but only because you have no friends at the end.
Man, dip is so fun. It's hard to get enough people together to actually have a good game of it, but when you do, like, there's really nothing like diplomacy. There really isn't.
Yeah. But then he answered the question seriously as well. For his oldest, it's Dice Kingdoms of Valeria, filling in bubbles while making decisions. For his youngest, it's Card Kingdoms. For his wife, it's Ticket to Ride or Dominion. And for him, it's Dice Realms or Let's Go to Japan. All of these are pretty casual options.
Mm-hmm. Adrian on Discord says, I'd say a couple of games that give me that dopamine hit would probably be good for a de-stressor, like Super Mega Lucky Box and Kabanga.
Yeah, they have that, oh yeah, I got to do that. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yep.
Sure. And last but not least on Facebook, Kelly says her preferred games are On Mars and Raiders of the North Sea.
Man, talk about a completely different perspective on
Yes,
the
it
games
is.
that chill you out. Yeah, I was thinking about this too, And I didn't say this last time, but I think there is a kind of game that involves other people that I would find to be a fairly de-stressing game. And it's that Thinky Roll and Write, that Motor City Gameworks Roll and Write.
Because like a Fleet the Dice game.
Yeah,
or
it's just
something
so
like that.
satisfying to check all the boxes and
Knock out those
see
combos.
things get filled out. And the combo part of it is like still fun, but like it's the filling out of the board kind of stuff that I think is really, really fun.
So how about something like Metro X? It's not quite as thinky, but you get that.
No, because Metro X, you've got this puzzle, and there's lots of stops and starts, and you have to kind of twist and turn and adjust and things like that.
Okay, I see.
like the fact that like you're always moving forward in Fleet or in Three Sisters or something like that.
So a game where every option is good, and you're just choosing from good options.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. I can see that.
It's about no stress, right? Like, as soon as you're like blocked from something, you have to figure something else. You have to pivot, you have to change, you have to think, but if it's just like, oh, I get the shrimp instead of the cod, okay, that's not that big of a deal.
So that's our back talk for this week.
Great job, community. That was a lot of really good conversation about this one. I really, really do.
Yeah, I really liked it. So we're going to take a quick break, give you a snap review, and when we come back, we're going to talk about cooperative games.
We'll be right back. What is your favorite combo?
Peanut butter and jelly?
Personally, I'm partial to everything bagel with plain cream cheese.
Ooh, how about coconut and lime?
How about the birds and the bees?
How about a game where you all work together to find the best poker hand and score points based on how you contributed to that hand?
What?
Combo. That's the combo we're talking about.
This is a snap review for Combo from Happy Camper Games. Combo is a most tempting card game for 2 to 6 players ages 10 and up. Iquan Kwan originally designed the game Surfasaurus Max with Loosey Goosey Games, but this version is published by Happy Camper Games.
So let's talk about the art that's in this game. The components for Combo are pretty simple. There are cards in 7 fruit-based suits numbered 1 through 12. I really like these cards. Each fruit type has a monochromatic illustration and a patterned background.
And I love that the number and the fruit is repeated on all 4 of the corners, so it doesn't really matter how you hold the cards, or how you put them on the table. Basically, no matter what, anyone can read them.
There are also player mats and a cute little pineapple to mark the first player each round.
All right, that's what Combo looks like. How do we play it? What are the mechanics?
Start by setting up the deck, removing some number of cards. Then pass out player mats and deal 7 cards to each player.
The first player will play a card from their hand and draw a fresh card from the deck. Then the next player does as well. Go around the table until everyone has played 2 cards for 4 or more players, or 3 cards for fewer players.
Now look at all the cards that have been played this round and figure out the best possible combo that can be made, according to the chart on the player mat.
A combo is either 4 or 5 cards depending on the player count. The strongest one is a Super Slushy, which is a run of cards in order that are all the same color.
Next strongest is a Smoothie, which is cards that are all the same number.
Below that is a Slushy, which is a combo of cards all in the same color.
Then a Ripe Run, which is a group of numbers that are in sequence but in multiple colors.
If you can't make any of those, you still have your sweet scraps, the 4 or 5 highest distinct numbers.
If there's more than one combo available, you're going to take the strongest. If there's more than one combo of the same strength, take the one with the highest numbered card.
After you've figured out the strongest combo that can be made, all the cards that contributed to that combo score for their players. Cards that are tied, which means the same number was contributed more than once, those cards score half points. But unique numbers in the combo score full points.
The full and half point amounts are here on the top edge of the card.
For example, in this Ripe Run, 2 3s are on the table. Either helps make the best hand, so they'll both score at the end of the round.
For half points.
Now, discard all the unscored cards from this round, but keep your hand of cards. Pass the pineapple and start the next round.
Once everyone has been the start player an equal number of times, the game ends. Everyone counts up their full and half points, and whoever has the most points wins the game. So what did we expect from Combo?
Well, I had heard a ton about Surfasaurus Max. Lots of people have been raving about this game. So when I heard Combo was a reskin of that, I was immediately excited. Bundle that with the fact that it was being published by game industry veteran Jason Schneider, and I was totally in on this game.
This is the second game that we've seen from Happy Camper Games. We really liked their first published game, Trio, see our review, and I was hopeful that this would have some of that same feel, a fast-moving card game that's easy to teach and has some little hook that will keep us coming back over and over.
Well, let's talk about some surprises. Especially compared to Trio, I was actually a little surprised at how those first couple of games were kind of weird to get your head around, right? It actually really takes understanding the flow of the game in order to be able to enjoy it, at least for me. But I will absolutely say, once you get how it all works, this game is fantastic. Just don't forget to draw a new card after you play a card.
I feel like I understood how to play almost right away, but the names for the combos are awkward. We ended up just referring to them with poker terms like flush, four of a kind, straight flush. This is one place where the player mats were unexpectedly helpful, though. They serve as a full player aid, giving you the relative strengths of all the different kinds of combos and the specific setup for each player count. You could play without them, but they make the game a whole lot easier. The game does get a little weird at the highest and lowest player counts. At 2 players, you have a sort of dummy player that flips cards off the deck to possibly contribute to the combo. It actually works surprisingly well. And at 6 players, you run out of cards to draw well before the end of the game. You have to continue on with only what's left in your hand. That didn't feel great.
Okay, well, with all of that said, do we recommend Combo?
Combo is a great, unique game for the family. It's kind of cooperative in the sense that you can't create a full combo on your own. You have to work with people at least a little bit if you're going to score any points. But it's not really cooperative because you still want to get the most points and win.
There are opportunities to cut a player out of a combo by playing a higher card or taking the combo in a different direction. And this is something that I would say parents should keep an eye on. If one of your kiddos is being kind of passive aggressive and continually trying to cut another one of the kids out or another sibling, this might not be the right game, at least for now.
But it doesn't really impact our feelings about this game. The co-opetition
sort of
model forces player interaction, and we love it. The poker foundation of how the combos are made makes the game instantly relatable.
So we're going to give Combo 4.5 fruit out of 5.
And that's Combo in a snap.
And we're back. We're going to talk this week about cooperative games.
Yeah, and the last time we did this was like, I don't know, 200 episodes ago or something like that? 280 episodes ago?
Yeah, 6.5 years ago.
Yeah, so it's been a little while since we've talked very specifically about like top cooperative games. And in our defense, at that time, it was top cooperative games with kids. So, like I said at the top, I don't necessarily think we're going to like give you a top 5 cooperative games or anything like that. But certainly, I have a couple of favorites here that will come up as part of this conversation.
Sure.
But before we even get into like actual games, like let's talk about cooperative games. Where are some good places to employ the cooperative game where maybe a regular game might not fit?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind, especially based on that episode 108 from 6 years ago, is co-op games are a great way to bring younger kids into gaming with the family.
So, I mean, really any perfect information game is a really good way to bring kids into kind of the fold of playing games with the family, because you don't have information that you as the helper player are not supposed to see, right? So it doesn't ruin the game experience. Like any perfect information game, everybody can see everything, so it's totally fine. But cooperative games really let a kid, especially a younger kid, feel like they're on the same team as mom or dad or an older brother or sister. And that's a really good feeling, along with the process of learning how to play a game.
Yeah. Tied in with that, co-op games are a great tool to employ when you have a kid or an adult, but usually a kid who's a sore loser or a sore winner.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, a lot of this, I mean, is going to depend on the character of the people that you're playing with. And I don't mean like good character or bad character, but I just mean their personality in general. Some kids would really like to get one up on mom or dad, right? And in those cases, that perfect information game where you say, oh, you know, if you do this, you're really going to get me. That might appeal to some kids. Mm-hmm. But other kids may not like that, the idea of doing something that would hurt mom or dad, because they're kids. Look, we know a lot of adults who are very bad at separating playing a game and real life, and kids are much worse at that.
I remember a story from years and years and years ago, around the time we were starting this podcast, where we gave a friend a copy of Walk the Plank as a gift, and his kids played it. And he's like, this game is supposed to take 20 minutes, and with them it takes an hour because they keep trying to save each other.
Yeah. So that would be a, prime candidate for the cooperative game experiment.
Yes.
So yeah, there's a couple of different kinds of games when we talk about that goal of getting younger kids or getting non-gaming family or whatever into games. Cooperative games is a great way to do it because you can talk about strategy and you can kind of reveal the way that you think and say, okay, well, here's how to analyze this problem in a way. It's not just you got to figure out the mechanics, but also like, how do you think? How do you think critically as a gamer? Right?
Yeah.
And a cooperative game or a perfect information game, but we're talking about cooperative games, is a really good way to do that.
So when I was thinking about it for this show, I kind of split co-op games broadly into three big categories.
Okay.
The three big categories, every co-op game fits into one of these three, is you're either working together to solve a puzzle or a whole series of puzzles.
Or a problem in general.
Yeah. Or you are working together to tell a story, which will usually have some amount of puzzling in it. Mm-hmm. Or one person is giving clues to everyone else to guess.
Which I would argue is trying to solve a puzzle.
But it's, rather than working together to solve a puzzle, you do kind of have a team thing. Like, you're all working together, but one person is clue giving and everybody else is guessing.
Sure.
So those are kind of the three big categories in my mind. Obviously, there's some overlap, as we just mentioned. But those different kinds of co-op categories will work better in different situations.
Right. So a lot of games, especially the ones where you work together to solve a puzzle or specifically a problem, these are going to be games where the group or the individual players within a group are taking turns and then, air quote, bad stuff happens, right? That's the larger paradigm of this kind of a thing. And I actually have on my list of some of my favorite co-ops of all time, Shadows over Camelot, which... Sure. I love this game because of the theme. I mean, it's King Arthur and all of those legends. It's just, come on, I'm a boy. It's right. I'm supposed to like that stuff. It's like literally built in. I think they stamped it on my forehead when I was born. In all seriousness, that is a cooperative game. Everybody does some stuff, and then literally you flip cards out from the bad stuff deck, and that's how you play the game.
Right. I think a lot of co-op games fall into that, but not every one does. For example, Ultimatch. You're all working together to solve a problem, which is how do we get rid of all the cards on the table without running out of cards?
No, that's a great example.
But it's not you take a turn and then there's bad stuff, you take a turn and there's bad stuff. It's everybody takes a turn and the bad stuff is just kind of built into what's going on. Like, oh, do I get more cards to be able to keep working forward or not?
Do you think that's a thematic versus abstract thing? Because I'm trying to think of an example where what you described kind of happens, but it's in a game that like has a theme to it, as opposed to Ultimatch, which really is pretty themeless.
How about something like The Crew? Like, that's not heavily themed, but it is themed. It's just we need to reach this goal in this way.
I guess, and The Crew is actively telling a story as opposed to the implied story of many other games that we could think about, like Robin Hood or even Pandemic kind of has the story of, the world being taken over by a virus. So that's a really good example.
Speaking of Adventures of Robin Hood, I would look at that as being sort of that second category of you are working together to tell a story. There are problems and puzzles within there, but especially with Adventures of Robin Hood, there's usually not just one way to get there. It's not a hard and fast puzzle. It's a, let's see what we can do here, and the story unfolds as you play.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly parts of that which are you're running away from the bad guys, right?
Yes.
I mean, that literally you're doing that thing. But absolutely, that is a game that leans heavily on story.
Yeah. Most escape room games also kind of sort of fall into this category. Some are better at telling the story than others. Some are much more just like, here's a series of puzzles, solve them.
Yeah, I mean, this is another great example of, we talked about the micro-macro puzzle at the top, right? You are literally all working together to solve a puzzle.
Yeah, literally
That's exactly
a puzzle.
what's happening.
Yeah.
And then there's some kind of pseudo-narrative elements in the questions once you've put the whole thing together.
But I'm thinking things like backstories, which we talked about about 2 months ago now. Alone Under the Ice. There's multiple ways to get through that story. Your decisions really matter. There are kind of puzzles to solve, but most of them are not something you can only solve in one way.
Yep, I agree with that. That's absolutely true.
All right. And then the third category, somebody is giving clues. Everyone else is guessing. You may or may not take turns being the clue giver, depending on the game. There are tons of things in this category. Most of them are word guessing games, but not all.
Well, I mean, I would argue that something like Similo isn't technically a word guessing game, unless the names are words, which I suppose you could say is true.
No, I actually, Similo is a great example of one that's not about the specific words. You have objects on the table and you're trying to guide somebody to a specific
things
object.
Could be various attributes of those, right?
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily a word.
Yeah. That was my thought on these big three categories. And then, of course, we can break it down a ton more.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like every game mechanic has some kind of take on how to do it cooperatively. You mentioned the crew for trick taking, right? What's a good worker placement cooperative game?
Endangered. Which, I mean, that's dice placement, but it's worker placement.
Sure. Okay. I could take that. Word games, we kind of talked about this very quickly. One of my favorite games of all time, it happens to be a word game, is Illiterati.
I was going to say, because Illiterati is not like other cooperative word games, which are usually guessing games. Illiterati is a put words together a la Scrabble, Bananagrams, something like that.
Exactly. With just, I don't know, art that I super love and a theme that I just tickles me, and I just really have a great time with that game. Also because we have the deluxe edition, the box is super nice and all that other stuff.
I don't love it as much as you do, but I will say it works remarkably well. And it's one of those things we talked about when we reviewed it, that Illiterati is a great way to introduce those kind of word games to children because you're cooperating.
And you literally can say, well, can you make something from these letters or whatever? You know, I believe there's a timer in there, so you might have to kind of like put the timer
Fudge
on
the
its
timer
side or fudge it or whatever, just for the sake of helping kids through this part of the experience. But yeah, it's a great game for stuff like that.
Yeah. There are deck building cooperative games. We've talked about Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle.
I am excited for the Avatar one.
The Avatar one, yeah, I'm excited for that too.
Maybe we make the kids play that tonight. Like, I'm on board with that.
There are ladder climbing cooperative games like The Mind.
Sure.
There are dungeon crawls.
Like Adventure Zone Bureau of Balance, which is kind of a dungeon crawl. Or Core Quest is a dungeon crawl.
Core Quest is totally a dungeon crawl. Yeah.
How about set collection cooperative games like Tesseract, for example? You have to collect those sets in order to activate things on your player board.
Oh, sure. There's a press your luck element in some cooperative games, like the kids game, but Mickey's Christmas Carol, where you're pulling tiles out of a bag, and you can keep pulling, but if you hit, a certain number of bad things, it's going to push you towards the bad stuff.
Sure. There are more abstract games, like you mentioned, Ultimatch. There are very non-abstract games, like your Pandemics, or even Disney Animated, which, if you are a Disney fan, you pretty much need to own that game, I would say. There's all sorts of stuff. What about cooperative deduction games?
I mean, sure, there's deduction games that do that, like Sherlock Holmes.
Okay, I mean, you're trying to be the one who does the deducing in a game like that. But, there's one enemy, I suppose, and everybody's trying to figure them out.
You're all trying to deduce it. Mm-hmm. You could push those games to be slightly more competitive, like an Outfoxed or something, and, whoever figured it out, they're the winner. But generally speaking, especially at that more kid kind of level, it's very much a, can we figure it out before the bad guy gets away, period.
Sure.
And we haven't even talked about all of the various timed cooperative games like Kites and Skyrockets and Panic Island, which is a timed memory cooperative game.
Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff.
There's a huge variety. Just in case you have been listening to this show for a while and have not played cooperative games as a family, we want to encourage you that there are a ton out there and you can find one that's going to feel right for your family.
All right, so I actually have mentioned a couple of games that I consider to be some of my favorites, and maybe I'll list those again and talk about them a little bit. Do you have any games that you consider some of your favorites?
Well, when we were talking about this, I was like, okay, if I could only ever play one cooperative game again.
Okay.
And all others were off limits to me.
Okay.
Is there one I would pick? And there is.
Okay, so you only have one game on your whole list, and I have 4 games on my list.
I mean, I enjoy lots of cooperative games.
I know, but some of your favorites. I have 4 games and reasons why I like each one of them.
I will give the one game, my top cooperative game.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
It's Similo.
Sure, the game's great. I mean, do you get to count all of the varieties?
Yes.
Yeah, see, my one, this is such a family gamers thing to do. My one game, that's 10 games.
I mean, if you limited me to a single deck, I would pick Fables, but Similo in general,
sure.
The game, it's super portable, really easy to set up, easy to pull new people into it, and I feel really accomplished every time. The clue-giving part is really rewarding. The guessing part is rewarding. Having those discussions around the table of everyone other than the clue giver being like, well, maybe they mean this or maybe they mean that, and let's try to discuss it. And the clue giver is like trying not to give anything away.
Burying their face in their hands.
But what we've told people in the past is those discussions are super important because the clue giver is listening, and they can use that to inform their next clue.
Right.
All of that is awesome. And even when you lose, it's one of those games that gives the opportunity afterwards to kind of break it down and be like, oh, I thought for sure that you meant this with this clue. And the person is like, oh, no, I was actually looking at the background color and I can't believe you guys didn't get it and whatever. And it ties together all of the things we love about family games. There's communication. You learn about each other. You learn about yourself. You have those little dopamine hits every single round when you have picked the right things. It's just fantastic.
Mm-hmm. It's a really, really good game. I remember way back when we got the first one, which was Fable. I think we got Fables and History at the same time.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously they've grown a lot. There's now some branded ones and stuff like that. It's just a great series. It's a great set of games. I love mixing them up, and it's really a lot of fun. All right. Well, the first one on my list is one I already mentioned, which is Shadows over Camelot. I think a lot of people say that this game is kind of like solved at this point. Like there's certain ways to pretty much guarantee that you'll be successful in some of the quests, but I don't really care because this game is so fun. I have a copy. It's a little beat up because I've had it for a very long time, but it's so good. I just love this game. I love everything about it. I love the art style. Great game from Days of Wonder. I also mentioned Illiterati. This is Gap Closer Games. It is a really fun cooperative word building game where you are united in battling back these anti-word people called the Illiterati, which is just ridiculous.
Yes.
But it's ridiculous in all the right ways.
Yeah, I agree. And as we mentioned, Illiterati, it's got all of those elements you want to a really satisfying cooperative game and a really satisfying word game. And because it combines the two so well, it really can work for anybody in your family.
All right. The other two on here, I don't actually know how you feel about Shadows over Camelot. I know you like Illiterati, but these other two, you and I have talked about both of them on the show before, and you have indicated that you like them both. So I'm going to guess that you actually do.
Sure.
And okay, so I did one for theme, which was Shadows. I did one for word games, which was Illiterati. This next one, I'm going to see if you can guess the game when I tell you why it's on the list.
Okay.
I nominated this for the emotional impact.
The Grizzled.
You are correct. So The Grizzled is a game that is based in World War One. You are playing as French soldiers. I guess I don't know. I assume
French.
you're playing
You're
as French.
French.
You're not just playing as Allied soldiers. You are specifically playing as French soldiers.
Based on their names, they're
yeah,
all French.
Sure. I'm good with that. This game is very difficult, and literally the goal of the game is to counter enough of the bad stuff until the war is over, and that's it.
Survive.
And it's just survive. There's something about that very French art style to this game, or whatever it is, that it just weirdly connects.
Every time we have played this, we come out of it with this sense of camaraderie, like we have survived something.
I could not put my finger on it. As we've talked about this on the show multiple times. I don't know how it is that we can't figure out why this game has such an emotional impact, but it does. When you pull that card for like One Quiet Night or whatever
Christmas
it is,
Day,
whatever, it's not One Quiet Night's from Pandemic, but
the Christmas card.
It's just like everybody around the table, like you realize how tense you are.
There's that
And then
sigh
you're
of
like,
relief.
oh,
Yeah.
Thank goodness, right?
Oh, nothing's going to happen this time.
It's such a great game. I really would love to get a copy of the Armistice edition, which has the little figures.
Yeah.
But, that's not really available. So anyway, so that's that. And then one last game
Okay.
that is new-ish that I put on the list because the mechanics and the presentation and just everything about this game is so good. The only problem with this game, which is both an asset and a problem, is if I could only ever play one cooperative game ever for the rest of my life, I probably would want it to be a game that I could play with more than two people. This is a two-player only game, which is...
This must be Sky Team.
It is Sky Team. Yeah. See, like, Anisha and I are like practically the same person, but look, there's a reason why this game won the spiel. This game is fantastic. It's incredibly well put together. The graphic design is very, very good. The gameplay is super tight. The fact that this is two players sitting and working together to do this thing, there's really not a lot of room for error. There's room for variance, but not a lot of room for error.
Yes.
Right? I would say there's a little bit of play in the kind of the central mechanics of the game, which is really the only way it works. If there was no play in it, it would be too difficult.
Yeah, no, it would be an unsolvable puzzle.
Yeah, but that amount of play in the middle is what gives the game the room to breathe, but you still have to execute against the mechanics that are there in order to be precise enough to do all of the things to be successful. And I love that about this game. It also has essentially scenarios in the box. So it's not like a Pandemic where you're playing kind of air quote the same thing all of the time, but it's also not a legacy game. So it's not like you use it up and then you move on with your life. I just think they did a really good job finding that very particular niche for a two-player cooperative game. It's just excellent. It's just very, very well done. Also, I do have to add this, and I've seen a couple of games have done this now. I think Starship Captains did this, Sky Team did this, Little Alchemist did this. Instead of shipping dual layer boards, they're shipping these boards that are like fold in half and they have little stickers, and it keeps everything from warping.
Yes.
Like Fife is a great game, but the boards are warped because they're 2-layer boards that came shipped togetger, right? And it seems to happen all the time. I mean, it's another minor thing, but it's yet one more thing that they did right.
That Sky Team did right. Sure.
And, I think there's a lot of things that people can learn from a game like Sky Team.
Unlike the rest of these, I will say, you and I have only played Sky Team together, so I am just slightly more hesitant to give it the same kind of blanket recommendation. I'm not sure how Sky Team would play with, like, parent and child, or brother and sister, or something like that. You have to really be dialed in, same goal, same thoughts of how we're going to get there. Now, you should be able to talk through a lot of that in the game, but you have to know that going in.
Yeah, look, I would just say if you're playing with a kid or you're playing with brother and sister or whatever, just play a game without the dice being secret.
Yeah.
And then let them talk it all out and figure everything out while they're playing the game. And then say, okay, now play it again, but you don't get to know each other's dice.
Yeah.
And then boom, they're in the game. And I think that does it.
Fair enough. It also reminds me that a game we talked about a while ago, Turbo Kids, has a cooperative mode if you're playing with only 2 or 3 people, if you don't have enough to make teams. And that has that same sort of feel to it at a somewhat more approachable level for kids, that it's all about giving directions well and communicating well. and that's how you beat the various challenges in the game.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think they're different games. Like,
they're very
I mean,
different
obviously
games,
they're different games. But because I think one of the things that really does make SkyTeam kind of a masterpiece is how they've blended all of this stuff together. Like,
yes.
That is very specifically the graphic design of that game elevates it beyond good to great.
Yeah. So it was just my one caveat that don't rush out there and get SkyTeam if you're not sure about playing it with a kid.
I would just say play it on Board Game Arena.
Try it on Board Game Arena first.
Do that first. Yeah. That's exactly what we did before we bought it.
It's true. So that's a whole bunch that we break down about cooperative games. There's way more out there than you're probably aware of, but hopefully now you know a little bit more.
Yeah, so this is like the appetizer, potentially. This could be, sometimes you go somewhere and you get like an appetizer, or maybe a sampler of the kinds of entrees you could get from somewhere, and that's exactly what this episode is intended to be. So there's sort of a two-part backtalk question here. Mm-hmm. Question number 1, what's your favorite cooperative game?
Yeah.
Very, very basic, simple, straightforward question. I kind of like these questions. What's your favorite cooperative game? Do you have a cool story that happened while you were playing a cooperative game? By the way, D&D can be considered a cooperative game, 100%.
Yes.
So if that's your favorite, totally fair. But the second part of this is this a topic that you would like us to dig into a little bit more? Would you like us to break this out and maybe dive more into the specific genres of cooperative games? Do you want a top 5 cooperative trick-taking games episode or some things like that, or maybe top 3, because I don't know if we're going to get to 5.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you want a room to grow 2-player cooperative games?
Yeah, we haven't done room to grow in a while.
That's true.
Yeah. So what would you like us to talk about in the future, specifically about cooperative games, or maybe something else? I'm really, really curious what people are looking for these days.
So by now, you know where to find the Backtalk questions. It's going to be in the Facebook community and on the family tabletop community on Discord. There are links to both of those in the show notes.
Mm-hmm. If you generally just want to find us online, you can find us on Facebook, on X, on Instagram, on TikTok, and on YouTube at Family Gamers AA.
And even if you're not interested in responding to that Backtalk question, you should join the Facebook community or the Family Tabletop community on Discord, or be like the Joyful Jedi and do both so you can call me out when I forget to put things in one spot.
thefamilygamers.com/community for the Facebook community, and thefamilygamers.com/Discord for the Discord.
If you don't like social media, that's fine. We understand. You can also email us directly.
Andrew at thefamilygamers.com.
Anitra at thefamilygamers.com.
By the way, I don't like social media either. It's a
necessary evil.
A necessary evil for me. That's fine. Anyway, please don't forget to subscribe to this show. Tell your friends about the show and leave us a review at Apple Podcast or whatever your podcast subscription source is. By the way, that does include Spotify, which we're on, or TuneIn or Amazon Music. Or you can find us on YouTube Music even. You can just open up that browser or go to YouTube Music and listen to the episodes on there while you're totally working.
Totally working.
Mm-hmm.
The Family Gamers is, of course, sponsored by First Move Financial. Go to firstmovefinancial.com/familygamers to learn how the team at First Move Financial can help you pile up the victory points.
Thanks so much to the team at First Move Financial for sponsoring the Family Gamers podcast.
Well, I think that's going to be it for us this week. It definitely makes me want to go play some more cooperative games.
Yeah, and you know what? Our next show is going to be just after Valentine's Day.
So more SkyTeam then.
That's definitely a possibility. So we'll let you all know in a couple of weeks what we played on Valentine's Day. But until then, everybody,
play games with your kids.